Solutions to the Dropout Crisis, addressing the dropout crisis one strategy at a time. Brought to you by the National Dropout Prevention Center Network with support from K-12 and Fuel Education and in partnership with Clemson Broadcast Productions. Hi everybody, welcome once again to Solutions. We're here in Palm Springs, California at the National Dropout Prevention Network Conference, and we are meeting some incredible educators from all across the country. And we have two of them here with us today who are going to discuss their program from Pontotoc, Mississippi. Before we get to that, I'd like to introduce you all to my special co-host for today, and that's Dr. Dee Stegman. Dee is a recently retired professor from Clemson University's College of Education, but Dee is also the chair of a group called the NDPC Fellows, National Dropout Prevention Center Fellows. And maybe, Dee, you could just take a moment to tell our audience a little bit about the Fellows.
Sure. We have a group of professionals that are situated all across the country, and we are affiliated with the National Dropout Prevention Center and Network, and we have different areas of expertise. We have professionals who are active professors at universities, but also educational consultants. And right now they're located, oh my goodness, in Virginia, New Jersey, Minnesota, South Carolina, and Arizona. My area of specialty is early childhood education, but I'm really interested in dropout prevention starting very young. So I'm always interested in strategies that are being used in effective schools for engaging students, and I actually think it really begins in kindergarten, and I even work with 4-year-olds in public schools. And so we have some concerns about even dropout rates with 4-year-olds, expulsion. So I think it's a continuum, and so I'm really excited when I see schools that have developed strategies for dropout prevention.
Yes, she is a great supporter, and actually the fellows have produced 2 reports that are on the website, so we point you in that direction if you want to see some good research reports that bring research to practice. And so we're glad to have you with us because your knowledge base is incredible. And now our special guests today who are presenting here at the conference, and in a way this is a workshop for the audience who could not be here, as well as those who were and missed your session for some reason or other. So let me introduce you first on, in the red dress, is Dr. Michelle Vivens, who is the superintendent of Pontotoc, Mississippi Schools. And it's great to have you here with us, Michelle. I know you're going to take us through a great story about what you're doing down there. And Courtney Beard, who has, I said, well, Courtney, what is your title? And which one is, she has many hats down there in Pontotoc, but in this particular case, the hat is that of Director of Alternative Education. So Courtney, it's great to have you here.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for having us.
Oh, it's wonderful. So this is the happy moment when I get to turn the program over to you, and we're going to enjoy being your audience and having some, and representing that audience out there with questions and comments. So over to you, Michelle.
Okay, thank you. As you said, I'm the superintendent of Pontotoc City School District in Pontotoc, Mississippi, which is a very small rural school district. We have about 2,300 students, but we have such amazing community engagement that it is a fantastic school district. And what we worked on last year, we started in January with a program called Warrior Accelerators. Our goal being to catch students early and catch them up. We know that students who are 1 to 2 years behind in their kindergarten cohort are at a very high risk for dropping out. So our goal was to identify those students at the end of their middle school experience and make sure that we structure their junior high and high school experiences in such a way that they graduate within a year of their kindergarten cohort, and that we engage them back in the educational process in a way that they are connected to adults and to other students. So that all stems from our district's mission and vision. Our vision is to cultivate warriors of distinction. Cultivate because it takes something a little bit different for every child, just like it does for every plant, and distinction because it's a little bit more than excellent. We're distinct. And our mission is to make sure that those students have a spirit of pride, growth, and service, both in the global society and in our community as a small part of that society. Our first goal is always to make sure that our students have increased academic achievement. We know that that sets them on a path for success. Our second goal is to make sure that they're in an environment instructionally where they feel safe, and that we foster a strong culture in every school, and that it's positive. Our third district goal is to make sure that our educators are high quality and world class, and that we recruit the best and retain the best. Our fourth goal is to make sure that we're consistently a strong steward in my office of the financial resources we have, which are very limited in a small rural community like ours. And then our fifth goal is to aggressively seek opportunities to grow and to do something different. And by aggressive, we mean aggressive. We stay outside the box. We try something new if one thing doesn't work. So in this particular situation, what we do with Excelerators is focused on increasing student achievement so that those students who are behind become resilient and competitive again. We also focus on goal 2, that they feel emotionally and physically safe in our classrooms and in our school system. On goal 4, which is that we're responsible stewards of our financial resources. And since our resources are limited, we need something that costs nothing. And goal 5, that we give them varied and extensive advantages to all of our students, regardless of any issues they may have coming in.
Well, this is a great thing. Is you have these strategic plans and these goals and so forth, but it looks to me like you are aligning this whole project we're going to talk about with your goals, and that's good advice for everybody. We don't just put those up there for the website and then ignore them and do what we want to do. So you matched them up. I was just thinking that it might be interesting for our audience to hear about the demographics and what the town is like, and Pontotoc. Don't you think that would be kind of illustrative?
It is a small community, kind of a suburb of Tupelo, but Tupelo is small in comparison to many large towns. So it's a small suburb of a fairly small city. We have a strongly agricultural component to our workforce. We are near a Toyota factory. Our district, our county, along with 2 others, recruited the Toyota factory that is near us. So we're part of what they call the Pool Alliance, which means Toyota invests heavily in our educational process. And then we have a strong furniture manufacturing component. Within that, we have about 55% white students, about 35% African American, and somewhere around 10% Hispanic that are mostly English language learners. And we vary between about 75 and 80% free and reduced lunch.
But most of the students I taught years ago in a rural area. I know Dee grew up in the farm area in the Midwest. Are most of the students' parents working in the industries, or are they on the farms?
We have a pretty fair mix of that because we're close to Tupelo. So we are close to Northeast Mississippi Medical Center or North Mississippi Medical Center. So we have a lot of professionals. We have a lot of those who work in factories, and then we have a fairly strong mix of some transient.
Sounds like a pretty diverse community, doesn't it?
And I was wondering too about, because I know across the nation there's getting to be a teacher shortage. And the areas that seem to be struggling the most are the small rural communities. And I'm wondering how you recruit your teachers, because I see that excellence in teaching is really important, a goal for you. So how do you recruit high-quality teachers to your small rural community?
Unlike most districts, we don't really have a problem with that. Our demographic of teachers is very strong. We have a lot of nationally board certified teachers. We have quite a few with PhDs, a large percentage with at least a master's degree, and very large group that are strong curriculum specialists in what they do. And we're known as a place that people enjoy coming to work. So they come to us generally.
Oh,
now
that's wonderful.
We sometimes go out and recruit and take somebody that's great from somewhere else on purpose. But generally speaking, we don't have a lot of trouble.
And not a lot of turnover.
Not a lot. Once they get there, they stay. But, you know, that staying requires a strong buy-in to our strategic plan where we make decisions about children first.
Well, you can see that reflected then in the
Right.
fact that you are matching up your goals with actual practice here.
It sounds like teachers have a voice.
Teachers do have a voice, and it's a requirement of our board, an expectation that everything we do is linked to that strategic plan and places our students in the forefront. So why would we start something like Warrior Accelerators? For us as an administration, it's just not acceptable for any student to slip through the cracks. Every student has value and they're a benefit to our community in some way, so it's not okay to lose one. And we know that they are the future of our community, and they can either be positive or negative, and we decide that in our district. We decide that they're all going to be a positive addition to our community. Our community almost demanded it. I've been the superintendent there for about a year and a half, and they had a program called Pathfinders before me that was not, our teachers weren't strongly connected to it, but our community was, because it helped students catch back up. So our community expected there to be something similar to that, even though they didn't want that back. So we had to reimagine how we were going to accelerate learning for students who had gotten behind a year or two. And in Mississippi's accountability model, our graduation rate counts for 200 points. So it's doubled, wow. Which means we've got to graduate them to have high-rated schools.
Well, there's that, and the whole thing about you're tackling a very important issue here, which is staying on grade level and not the dropout rate goes off the charts when you've been retained once and especially twice. So that's particularly the need that all school districts have. How can we stop that? And you're trying to prevent that hemorrhaging at a certain point, I guess at the midway point in their academic life when things are starting to surface that there's some problems.
Another thing that Mississippi allows is for students to start earning credits for high school courses in 7th and 8th grade. So we tried to identify the students in 6th grade so that as they go into 7th grade, we make sure that we kind of front load them in 7th and 8th grade with credit-bearing courses so that they can catch up as they get to high school.
And how's that working? The 7th and 8th graders taking high school credit courses? Wow.
So prior to now, if a student took Spanish as an elective in 7th and 8th grade, it didn't count as a credit. Now we teach them Spanish 1 in the 7th or 8th grade, and it counts as a credit. We teach Art 1 in the 7th or 8th grade, and it counts as a credit. Our STEM course counts as a credit. Both of our math courses count as a credit. And we pick up some of the high school histories in 8th grade to count as a credit. So we can start early, allowing them to earn credits.
It sounds like certain courses are being selected to provide those credits. That would be something that a 7th or 8th grader could handle.
It would be motivating, I would think, for them to.
It is motivating, and they love the teachers who teach those courses. But we do kind of handpick what we offer there, that it is something that they can handle at that age, that it's not going to be something that creates a sense of failure.
And is this across the board? 7th graders all have that opportunity, or just these select ones we're going to talk about?
They all have that opportunity.
They all have that opportunity. Right. Wow.
It also helps with our kids who aren't accelerators. It allows them to take multiple electives in the high school. So if they want to participate in sports and band, which can take a big chunk out of a block schedule, it allows them to do that. So
that's planning ahead, isn't it?
We try. We want our kids to be diverse and to be able to do anything they want to do.
It's really good examples of engagement too.
Yes.
Different kinds of engagement. Yeah.
The things that bring kids to school, first of all, pretty cool to be taking these courses. But secondly, you know, band and sports are things that really tie kids to the school.
Right. It creates that student cohort.
Yeah.
It does.
Great.
So that's why we added Warrior Accelerators. The reason really that we focus on is that all kids are gifted, but some open their packages at different times than others. They're not all ready in kindergarten, first, second grade to open that package. They come with baggage that we have to unpack before we can make sure that they're ready to move forward instructionally. So we accept that. And from that, we picked our who. The students who are 1 to 2 years behind their kindergarten cohort. We look at principal recommendations. That's our initial identifier for these students. And then we look at some risk factors. So where typically being ELL or in special education, having discipline issues or attendance issues might be something that prevents you from being in a program. For our program, it's something that might get you in. Because we know that those are risk factors. The kids with discipline and attendance, we know that students who are a year or more behind may not come to school and may create discipline problems for a number of reasons, but one of those reasons is because they may not know the content, or they may not feel like they're as smart as their peers, or they may not feel like they fit in with their peers. So they create opportunities to not be with their peers. If that's an issue and we can catch them up, then we can correct those two issues as well. So that's why we use those to say, okay, these may have been problems, but let's look at what the discipline issues were. Or what the attendance issues were. And we look for students who are at a place where they're ready to open their package. Students who are committed.
How do you determine if they're 1 to 2 years behind? What data do you use to make that decision?
We look at their cumulative folders. Being a small district, though, most of the time our principals and teachers know when they get to their building if they've been retained a time or two. And then we have some really good transition communication between our schools. So the K-1-2 school sends the 3rd and 4th grade principal a retention list so that they know who they're getting in 3rd grade that's been previously retained. And that continues up the chain as they go to the 3rd and 4th grade school, the 5th and 6th grade school, the 7th and 8th grade school. So our principals really transition that and make sure that the next school's ready and aware.
And so when they get to the age that we're going to be talking about, have any of them been retained more than once?
Some, yes.
We got most of our for us here then.
Yes, most of our students who were in the pilot program that we started in January had been retained twice. So that was, we felt like those were the ones that needed the help the most.
That had to be your priority. Absolutely.
Right, the most immediately. So we prioritized them, and there were 7 to begin with in that program.
Well, I think this is a good example of think big but start small, and dealing with these were just such a important need because of 2 retentions.
Right.
So we'll see what happened.
So then we looked at, are they ready or not? The principal recommendations was one aspect. Then we had some conversations with their teachers. Can they do it? Can they accelerate? Are they ready? We looked at their grades, their attendance, just willingness to do the program, because for this particular piece, they had to be willing to leave the general ed environment and move into our alternative school setting. So they had to move away from some of the social aspects of junior high for a semester. They had to give up their extracurriculars for a semester. So we looked at, are you willing? Are you dedicated? You'll do whatever it takes. And did we have family buy-in? And by family buy-in, their parents came in for a one-on-one meeting with district administration, the teachers of this program, the director of this program, and the counselors with the student present at the meeting. And we talked about what it would take and what was expected, and contracts were signed. And Ms. Beard can talk about some of those family reactions when we offered.
I would say it's probably been the most rewarding experience in my life. Grandmothers, grandfathers just crying. Thank you for giving, my child an opportunity to catch up, because they were talking about dropping out, and now there's a sense that there's hope there that they might be able, that we expect them to graduate. Since we've implemented the Warrior Accelerator program, my phone in my office rang all summer long. word got out, parents were wanting to bring their kids to school to pay tuition so that they had an opportunity to catch up. So.
Yeah, it's kind of like you're giving them a lifeline. And what I'm wondering if their families are so supportive, but that's a time when you say they're going to have to leave their peers for a child for a whole semester. That's a long time. And to be willing and to be ready, and miss extracurricular, wow.
And
Yeah.
we had one that was very social, and she loved the social aspect, and she had to think about it. But then once she started thinking, and we worked it out where they got to go back to lunch with their peers, and they went back and took their math class with their peers. So they still had some peer interaction, but, now she is all A's and on the softball team, and she's just so thankful for the opportunity that she had just to get caught back up.
So there's that one semester, I want to be clear about this, one semester in this alternative site and then with lunch and so forth. But after that, that would have been after January last year.
That's right.
And then in this fall, they're back in the general ed with their old buddies again, and is that what happened?
They came to the alternative school for the second semester of their 8th grade year.
Yeah.
They went to the high school in August as 9th graders.
Okay.
And by Christmas, they will have enough credits to be mid-year promoted to 10th graders.
Okay.
And when they return next August, they will be juniors.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that says it.
Yeah.
There, I can understand the willingness to sacrifice one semester because you're going to get to go to high school. That's huge. Otherwise, they would be there one more year.
It would have taken them at least one more year to graduate.
Yeah. That's a good timing kind of thing,
It is.
If you'd done it the year before, that's too far in the future. They just don't see long term, but you could go to high school in the fall. I think I understand this now. I was kind of puzzled.
Yeah, and so one of the challenges then is to help them see the benefits of you're doing this now, but it's going to pay off later. And sometimes that's not easy for an adolescent to
And
understand.
some of them, most of them got it. Like I said, we started with 7. And one of the students, he just didn't get it. He got it, but once we got in the program, his discipline was an issue that was stopping the educational process for other students, and that's not acceptable. His work ethic was an issue. He didn't want to do the work. His attendance was an issue. And in that contract, you have to agree that you're going to come to school, that all absences have to be prearranged and excused, that you do your homework, that you do your classwork, and parents and students both sign that contract. So when they break the contract in such a way that their behavior distracts other students, they don't get to stay. He wasn't committed, he wasn't bought in, and he's no longer in the program.
So he's back with the group
Just
that he
the
was
general.
with, and he's behind.
He is.
Yeah. Maybe he'll be ready another year, maybe.
Maybe so.
Maybe so. We
Maybe
can always
so.
hope,
We're
right?
hoping.
Yeah.
His behavior now is fine. His attendance is pretty good. His grades are acceptable. But the length of time it's going to take him to graduate from high school with enough credits in Mississippi it's going to be a stretch.
So for someone like him who didn't make this first cut and they're now let's say they're in the high school 2 years behind, is there an option for them there yet, or is that something you're developing?
There is. We have kind of developed that this year. We are small enough that it's nice that we can develop as we go. So if we have someone come in that's a junior or move in, we had someone come in this year that should be a junior or is a junior but should be a senior. We offered the option of if you come to the alternative school, because we can monitor the number of classes you take and the number of the time, minutes you have a little more carefully there. We can take you off of a block schedule and put you on a 7-period day schedule and get more classes in. If you want to come to us and do it at the alternative school, we can graduate you by next December. So it's always an option, but the pull-out where we need to control the schedule more and get them out of a block becomes more, it's more of a risk at a higher grade, and they're a lot less willing to do it at a higher grade.
Oh, that's interesting. So
How large is the high school? How many students do you have?
It's about 750, 800. We have about 200 students per grade typically. So the when we identify at the end of 6th grade, we look to see who's been retained. We start tracking in 7th grade and specifically putting them in credit-bearing courses. We're more intentional about that scheduling in 8th grade, promote mid-year in the 9th grade so that they become 10th graders. When we start scheduling them for their freshman year, they meet with me. And I say, what do you want to do in high school? What do you want to do? Extracurriculars? Do you want to be in band? Do you want to be in softball? What do you want to do? And to the greatest degree possible, I plug that back into their schedules. At least one semester a year, if not both. And we schedule for their freshman year, we schedule what they're going to take until they graduate. They receive priority scheduling. They're the first students to get scheduled in the high school schedule. We keep them in a very small cohort so they take their classes together. They touch base with one of their teachers from last year at least once a day, the one that they've really connected with, so that she keeps us kind of in the loop if they need us. At reporting periods for report cards, I check attendance, discipline, and grades, and then I go chat, make sure that they know whether or not they're meeting the expectations, whether it's the chat that we need a little extra from you or you're doing great. And we couldn't be more proud. We still have that conversation. They have a real senior year with all the privileges. So if the rest of our students can do senior early release, they can do senior early release. So we make sure that by their junior and senior year, they're plugged in and just like anybody else, except they've got a little more, support.
Yeah.
And they know us by when they see us.
Well, it sounds like you're developing a good framework. And Courtney, I'm going to ask you this of you because you're the Director of Alternative Education. What, in fact, is happening in the education? Is it delivered by teachers? Is it delivered by online learning? I mean, tell us about that part of the program.
Just the teachers that teach it, and that was one reason that we were able to do the program with no additional money. Last year, the teachers that taught the courses at the high school, they took English 1. She came over to the alternative school and taught that block with them of English 1. Same thing's happening now. They're taking their same classes with the same teachers that any other child at the high school would be taking. So they are plugged in and going along.
So
so this is a face-to-face kind of setting, and it sounds like you have really deep relationships with your students. It's unusual to hear a superintendent say that you meet, with each student and get to know them that well. And the parents, you probably know the parents pretty well too.
We do.
We do.
They, we had one of our kids early this year that there were some issues that he never really discussed with us, but he was talking about when could he drop out. And it took a hot second for us to have his mama and his daddy in my office sitting around the round table with him discussing that we're not doing that. We will drag you across that football field kicking and screaming, but you're getting a diploma. You are too close to give it up now. And he is too close. He's going to be a junior in 6 months. You're too close. And he's one that was so accelerated that we had to add additional classes at the alternative school for him. He had been there 2 or 3 weeks, and they said, we don't have enough. He's not taking enough. He's so much more capable than that. So we had to offer health at the alternative school for him. And we're just not willing to let him go.
Well, that's a great message.
Yeah, and it's rare to have those kinds of relationships with all of your students, and so personalized that you would recognize this student needs more. And yeah,
well, it's certainly all about relationships, and the fact that the teachers are ones that they seem to bond with. So help me with this, though, alternative school director. The teachers coming from the high school to teach, but does this teacher already teach in the alternative school, and are they also in classes with others in the alternative program? I mean, I want to get clarity on that.
When we started, they were in a classroom by themselves, just the 7 of them, and she came in and taught that credit.
Yeah.
Now that they've gone to the high school, they're in smaller classes, but they're also with additional students in the classroom. So Dr. Bivens will get to this, but we have 4 state-tested subjects in Mississippi, and Algebra 1, Biology 1, U.S. History, and English 2, but we double block them. And so when we double block them, we also block them with some of our ELL and special ed students that need the help. So
Okay, thank you. All right, so what do we got here?
So this is the where, which we've already talked about a lot of this, is that they are in a kind of a blended learning environment. We have such incredible teachers at our junior high that when we said we're going to pull these kids out, they came to us and said, can we have them back for math? We want them to still come to us for math. And because they're not discipline problems, that was fine. For STEM, their computer class that is credit bearing, can they come back for that so they get their computer credit? Absolutely. Some of them took 8th grade science, which is a tested class, and that teacher wanted them back for that. So our teachers are real committed to, if out of the class is what they need for this, great. But if they need to be in my classroom, can I have them back? Sure, you can have them back. And that gave them a little more social interaction. We did have to take away extracurriculars for that one semester, but now they're back in those.
Okay. So they signed their contract and saw the reason why. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So our how, and we've talked a lot about these already, was to create a cohort, a group of kids that kind of take care of each other. We've got a social butterfly who loves to be social. We've got, another young lady who really enjoys the social parts of school as well, but is a little quieter. We've got a young man who is extremely quiet, but he kind of keeps everybody in line. We know who they are, and they have a tight bond with each other because they got to be together in a location where they weren't failing anymore. They were excelling.
I'd love to see how these small groups of students who probably never would have been brought together in such a way, all bond together in this common experience and support each other. You never, in alternative programs particularly that are well done, you just don't see bullying.
No.
You just don't see it.
No.
And so
and the teacher that is their point of contact talks about how their competition against each other. They want to do better than each other in the classroom. When they get the test back, I did better than you did. And they're constantly doing that with each other, which is great because they're pushing each other.
Yeah.
So we were able to do it with no extra money, no extra people, no extra space. We just had to be creative to reimagine the resources that we have and to use those in a different way. So that's one of the things in my office that we do is we end up with 4 or 5 of us sitting around a table trying to think outside the box. And our motto is kind of box. What box? There's no box. We're not. As long as we can fit it into our state's accreditation standards and make sure that it's legal and that we're not doing anything that's going to hurt those kids, it's no holds barred. Put all of our options out on the table. And then we come up with some really great things. And as I said, they have the priority scheduling, and we plan their entire high school experience as far as their curriculum at the beginning of their freshman year, or really at the end of their 8th grade year. And one of the important pieces was having someone work on the design who had strong curriculum and accreditation knowledge of what our state requires, so that could be planned out early and effectively. So they all have a plan. It's in a binder. We know what they're taking, what semester they're taking it. If they take the semester that they take Algebra 1, they take compensatory algebra so that they get the same content from 2 different instructors and in 2 different ways. The semester that they take Biology 1, which is tested, they take Field Experiences in Science, which is another credit-bearing course. So when we double block them, it's to 2 credit-bearing courses, and the Field Experiences will be the hands-on piece of that so that they get to touch what they're trying to learn.
Kind of like the laboratory.
More concrete.
It is.
Yes, yes.
So we hit all of those learning styles.
And is your alternative, the classroom, is it within the same school building?
It's across
The street.
It's close.
It's close enough that
So they can come back over for lunch or to go to the other class.
and it happens to be the closest to our office, so they see our faces
Oh, that's
frequently. We go check on them. But we do alternative school a little differently. So on your last day of alternative school, we have donuts and, we celebrate the exits, and we don't treat it like it's a jail. It's just not.
Yeah.
Some kids just need to learn in a different place, and we try to be real conscious of that.
Sounds real positive. Yeah.
It's seen that way, and when that happens, we have parents who request alternative schools so that their child can be successful.
Oh, I know. All these years at the center, getting calls from parents who would have loved this for their child. There was no such option in their community, and you know, we're a national center, so you know, people who are in the middle of Kansas, you know, how can we can try to connect them to an alternative school director at the state level who can probably get down to that level. But most alternative schools are not what this one sounds like. And when you do see this, it's always the best thing you've ever seen in education is a good alternative program, and everybody's caring, and you have that cohort that they just all bond together. It is just a wonderful thing to see. So congratulations on that, my goodness.
Well, now you can tell them to move to Pontotoc.
They can do what?
They can move to Pontotoc.
That's, well,
That's
they can
right.
certainly come. You might get some site visits, you know.
They are welcome.
Yeah, and they can go and back and figure it in their environment. They may not have the school right across the street for lunch, for example. I mean, we got to be creative, right?
Creative.
That's right.
And you don't really have to assign mentors because you all are mentors, right?
And the teachers too, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yes.
All the adults kind of take care of these kids, and we take care of them.
Now, did the teachers all buy in, or were there volunteers who wanted to be part of this?
That's probably the next slide, the why not.
Well, there you are.
There you are.
Okay.
There was some initial friction because the teachers didn't have the best impression of the prior program. So they wanted to be sure that these students were held to the same standards and expectations as every other student would be. And for some, there was not an understanding of how we were going to get the 24 credits that the student needs to graduate in that length of time. And they had to see that on paper. They had to see that kind of planned out. And for some, there was friction for a multitude of other reasons, but we were able to dispel most of that within the first semester because the kids did what everyone else did. They just did it at an accelerated pace. And they had to make some sacrifices to do it. Once our teachers saw that our students were willing to sacrifice for it and that they were doing the same thing, the friction melted away. One of their other concerns was fairness versus equity. We have that conversation quite a bit in our district, and it's part of our, it's part of who we are, is that equal, where everybody gets the same thing, and fair are not synonyms. Fair is everyone gets what they need to get to the same outcome, and it will be slightly different for different students. But that's in our vision, cultivating warriors of distinction. That word cultivating indicates that what one needs might not be what someone else needs, and that we're going to do whatever it takes for every child. So as that has shifted in our culture and become more of a reality that different doesn't mean unequal, it means that we're going to be fair and we're going to be just and give every student what they need and every opportunity. You've seen that become less of a why not. And then the framework, that while the people who worked in Pathfinders, the previous program, and the students and parents felt like it was a great program, it was different. And they didn't see the long-term success of those students being an option. They weren't sure they were going to pass state tests, where right now, Ms. Beard can tell you that that's not the case.
They took a benchmark about 2 weeks ago, and all 6 of ours are on the track to be proficient on the state test. So not only pass it, but be proficient. So the program has really boosted their confidence in their testing as well. So,
and in that group, we have 2 special education students, so 2 students with IEPs, and then the other 4 are not. And to see them benchmarking at 83% correct and looking like they're going to be proficient on a state test, it's for many of them the first time that they've been proficient on a state test, which is just an indication of how ready they were to open their package. They just needed an opportunity for that.
Yeah, That's an interesting phrase that you have in this. Here's open the package in the
Yeah.
wind, because I'm thinking they've presumably had years of not doing well and not feeling good about themselves, and somehow this lifeline has come along. But at that point of grabbing it, I know their parents were desperate, and whether they were or not, but how did they get the confidence? How did you do that to give them the confidence to know, even though you've had this all your school years, you've been retained several times, this isn't, you're not proficient. How do you get that message to a kid?
I think it was just loving on them. We loved and we loved and we loved some more. And it took a while for them to build trust in us, but once they saw that the small cohort in the small classroom was really benefiting them, then they started trusting us back and started giving us their best work and knew that they
believing
could.
in themselves.
Yes.
Yeah, because your expectations were there, so
Right.
so they believed in themselves, because you did. Yeah.
We did.
Yeah, I would say alternative educators that could teach the rest of us a lot, but just believing in them and truthfully believing in them, and kids can always tell when it's true or authentic.
It's capacity building.
It is
It's really
absolutely.
positive.
That's a really interesting storyline, I think, that these kids have not had that sort of experience. Wonderful teachers, though they may have had, they've started to believe about themselves something else, but somehow this has just hooked them at the time when they, and with the, like you say, loving them, it is turning them around. And it's quite extraordinary, and it's a great message to people in school districts of 100,000 students that this is the kind of way we need to treat these kids.
And there were lots of donuts and lots of McDonald's lunches and
Well, that'll do it too.
I mean, I pulled up
Motivation.
to McDonald's and didn't know you could spend $38 at McDonald's, but apparently you can.
can.
So
Yes, well, when you have a bunch of them, you must have a minivan or something, a van to take all 7 of them around.
we didn't take them. We picked up and
You
brought
picked it
to
up.
them.
They would have liked that, I'm sure.
But there was a lot of praise and a lot of, you can do this, and a lot of, we believe in you. And most of them in their early years in school had some other issues, whether it was moving around quite a bit
yes.
or family, home life issues. A lot of them had something else that was going on in those early years, and our teachers knew what that issue was. And for a lot of them, it had resolved and things were fairly
Yes.
stable. And so we knew that that was going to be where they were ready for success. None of these students, just like none of our dropouts, or I refuse to believe that any of our dropouts drop out from a lack of ability.
Right.
I think
Right.
sometimes it's just a lack of opportunity.
Yeah.
And all of these were able, they were capable, they were smart, they were intelligent. They were wonderful kids.
So you gave them that opportunity.
We gave them that opportunity, and every other one we can give them.
It sounds like this concept of readiness is really important. That a year earlier, a student might not have been ready for this. So I think being able to assess that is really critical.
I think what you said, that 7th grade is too far away from high school. But second semester of 8th grade, high school's very real.
Right.
And once it's real and you get that I'm going to go as a 9th grader, then I'll be a 10th grader all in the same year, and the next year I'll be a junior, they can really grasp that at that point. But in 7th grade, they're not ready for that. And skipping 8th grade is not really the place to do it. It's where you change mid-year in high school, that it's tangible.
Right. And it's really getting them ready for high school and being a little bit more mature.
Right.
Great.
Right.
Okay.
And obviously there was some freaking out. But change is scary. But like I said, that's why we kind of kept everything in our hands. Every schedule, every kid's course alignment for the next 3 years, I wrote those by hand. Those are on a folder. I have copies, the counselors have copies, the parents have copies. We did every bit of that by hand and kept it in our hands to build capacity and in our staff to do it now. And I think probably they could. It's just a matter of whether or not I can let them go. And I'm not sure I can.
Well, you're going to have to recruit 7 more.
That's a money issue.
Oh.
So we'll see. We'll see. Or this is a priority. So I don't have to let them go if this is a high priority, and it is.
Yeah.
So what now? We give our kids a fighting chance. Right now, all 6 of them are passing all of their classes. We got mostly A's and B's, a few C's thrown in. There are no discipline issues. There's one write-up that's occurred in the first semester of school among our kids, which is pretty normal. They're just normal kids. Our IEP students are more successful than they've ever been in their school careers, making better grades than they ever have. They have that cohort feeling, those teacher relationships. Attendance is not an issue. They come to school, and they are participating in the extracurriculars that they would like to. For one, it's softball. For another, is powerlifting. But they're doing what they want to, and it's relevant. We take what may be abstract in a regular classroom, and by double blocking them, we make those things relevant to them. And their high school experience is very relevant to them and prepares them for their future. We do have broad community support. We have people every day call, and counselors say, is this one appropriate? This one's moving in. Is this one appropriate? People who pay tuition so their kids have this option, and people who move to our community so that their kids have this option. And our community supports it, and it's allowed us to expand in those double blocked classes. We are able to put some of our ELL students in, some of our special ed inclusion students, or other kids who just struggle sometimes in a regular classroom. So we've been able to expand it to kids who aren't in this program and still stay at that no extra money, no extra people, no extra space, which means our high school is incredibly committed to making sure that these kids are successful. And these students represent, in 2 years, 6 percentage points, or 6 points in our accountability model. So it's worth it.
It's worth it.
And even if it weren't for that, it's worth it. They graduate. They graduate ready to go to a junior college.
It's looking very promising.
Very promising. It is very promising.
Oh, so we have come to the end. My goodness.
Yes, but your last, on the prior slide, the very last one said expansion to other at-risk groups. So I'm curious, you seem to bring a mindset that's very positive and capacity building. Is that translating down to the teachers of kindergarten and first and second and third grade? And are they starting to be a little bit more, perceptive about children maybe needing extra attention in second or third grade, so that by the time they're in 8th grade, they've already worked out some of the issues?
It's interesting that you asked that. The other thing that we present this week is called Tribe Time, which is a program that we do in kindergarten to do immediate and on-time interventions for early literacy skills. Our group of kindergarten teachers, before I arrived in the district, they were 14th from the bottom in the state in our early literacy assessment. And after a year of Tribe Time, they're 14th from the top.
Wow.
And those students went to second grade, to first grade, the ones who were promoted. And a few we held back. We knew they weren't ready because we had strong data to support what we were doing. But the ones who went to first grade, when we tested them again on STAR reading, they were 100% at or above benchmark.
Wow, that's impressive.
Which is amazing.
Yes.
But it let us know that we had identified the right kids to move forward, and the kids who maybe came to kindergarten without the readiness they needed.
Well, that was my next question. Do you have 4K?
We do not.
You do not, okay.
And we were 7th highest in the state among districts without pre-K.
Really? Because a lot of states are moving to universal 4K, and one reason is to identify the particularly at-risk children that early on.
We're working with our daycares and Head Starts to begin to do that.
Good.
Well, it sounds promising, especially now that you're going down into the early grades as well, so there will eliminate some of the needs for some of these students to have this special intervention. So you see it continuing.
Absolutely.
And as long as you can save kids from falling through the cracks, why not?
Why not?
Yeah, and it sounds like it benefits the whole school body. It's been great to hear your story today. We talk about a lot of big time programs here on this program, but I always love it when we get have our network members share what they're doing in their schools, because our audience is made up of folks like you who yearn for answers to these pressing concerns in dropout prevention. And this is a great one for saving students who are falling through the cracks. So I thank you both for joining us today.
Thank
It's
you.
been nice to have you.
Good luck in the future. I know you'll do well.
Yeah, that's
Thank
sounding
you.
good. And thank you.
It was a
I
pleasure to be
appreciate
here.
having
Yes.
you here. Yeah, I love working
We'll
with
have
Dee.
to do a road trip to Mississippi.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
You're
hello.
Sounds good. I wonder how many miles that is from Clemson. Well, we'll figure it out.
It's not that far.
Not that far. It's not that far. And Tupelo. Hey,
Tupelo,
we can
that's
go
right.
check in on Elvis's birthplace as well.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of good reasons to come. But thank
Absolutely.
you. It's been great to meet you here in Palm Springs, and I'm sure our audience are going to benefit from this program. We're happy to share it with them.
Thank you.
So it's my time to say thank you for joining us today for this broadcast of Solutions, and we look forward to seeing you next time.